Hello, Otome lovers, and welcome to the Otome.com podcast, your ultimate source for all things romance, mystery, and storytelling in visual novels. I'm Sweet Pixel.
And I'm Lover's Lens, and today we're diving into the dark, atmospheric, and deeply mysterious world of Chronicles of Taudun. Joining us are Zee and Nim from Square Weasel Studio, the duo behind this incredible game. Zee, Nim, welcome. Could you start by introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about what each of you do?
So hi, I'm Z. I used to be an artist in my previous life. I worked in some video games, some films, doing VFX, 3D models, illustrations, that kind of thing. And I kind of retired sort of in 2016 when I met Nim. And then together we got the idea of making some kind of story project of our own. And then we thought, hey, visual novels, why not? We like books. We like reading. Writing is a very low budget way of creating scenery. You don't need like a set or, assets. You don't need actors. You can just put some text. And Nim is amazing at illustrating. So they did the art and we sort of just taught ourselves how to do all the other stuff, like make music and sound and things.
So I guess now I introduce myself, even though you introduced me already.
Sorry.
So yeah, I'm Nim. I was freelance artist and now I draw for our games. I write, I program, do a little bit of music, those kind of things.
It's so nice that you have this experience and now you manage to use it to do a project together.
Yeah, we kind of wanted for our first project to make something simple, something doable, because since it is our first thing, we wanted something that we can actually finish in maybe like a year or two. So visual novels seemed as a good beginning because we are both visual artists, so both of us can draw, and we dabbled with writing a little bit, and it just happened. We wanted to make a game we would like to play, and at the beginning it was supposed to be a very small thing, and then it kept escalating, and now it's a very branching, very complex saga.
Hydra.
Yeah.
I had, so prior to this, I had a long history of planning things that are way too ambitious for me, imagining like worlds or games or concepts and things that are just basically impossible to do. And I kept making excuses to delay starting the thing. And this time we went on our first game in the opposite direction, which is to make the bare minimum, they call it a minimum viable product, MVP, something that has all the features of a thing. It can be regarded as a complete entity, but only as little as you need to put in to make it all work together. And of course, having minimum viability doesn't mean you just kind of don't care about the quality. We still really love doing all the parts of it. So it's just trying to make something achievable, basically. And visual novels was the perfect medium for that, as it turned out.
I agree. I think I can relate to having a big imagination and going really all out, so to speak. So I also find it kind of difficult to start something and finish something, and I get to the planning out part and figuring out what I need, how many assets, how long a story is going to be. But then when I see just how many things I want to do, I get discouraged because it feels too big. It feels just too much for me. And I never started. So I think I understand exactly what you mean. Now for the game. This game is filled with mystery and intriguing events like a collapsing tower, memory loss, and mysterious rituals. Let us dive right into the story by asking you for a brief summary of what the game is about.
The game is about it's solving a mystery, and of course, I guess I can just paint you a picture. I think it's easiest that way. So imagine that you woke up in a strange place you don't quite recognize, and you don't know how you got there and what you're supposed to be doing there. And someone comes to you and shakes you awake and say, hey, we are in trouble here. We're in danger. And we must work together now to save ourselves. And then they tell you that you don't remember anything because of a magic ritual has kind of gone off the rails. Something that you are doing has caused this, and you are just suffering from the effect of it, the aftermath. And now you must try to find a spell that can undo the damage and save the both of them. So you remember certain things, certain words, things that are perhaps deeply ingrained in your upbringing and things, but you don't know some other facts like your name, what happened yesterday, this other person's history, your history together. So you're trying to go through this kind of calamity together, guided by the other person who supplies you directions and on what to do, where to go and find your book, your spells, and how to cast them, if you're to find them, how to avoid danger and things like that.
Yeah, but while you are trying to save yourself, you are at the same time discovering fragments of your past and discovering fragments of your relationship with Ilar, who woke you up. So you're kind of, there are two plots, right? One is of self-discovery and trying to figure out why Win, as the main character, has this sadness and grief inside of them. So they're trying to find the reason for it, trying to fill in the holes, but they don't have time for that. So the urgency of the impending doom and their need to find themselves is at odds. So they're always torn into two directions. They want to find more, but they also need to do the thing they have to survive. So that's also, there is a lot of choices in the game, and sometimes you choose one thing, but that puts you on a way where you can't see some other things, right? So there is no good and bad choices. One choice will reveal a bit of truth, but it will hide others. So you need to play game many times and discover all possible, how should I say, paths, so you can see the whole picture.
Yeah, I jokingly called this kind of game a roguelike visual novel when we were working on it, just because like roguelike games, you can't get everything in one go. You can never do that. You can only unlock certain things in one playthrough, then you die, or you somehow reset, and then you start again, then you try something different. And no two rules can be the same. And then that's kind of sort of what we're going for. We introduce a lot of choices and variability in the response, and things that are basically too numerous for anyone to really keep track of. Even if you're trying to do the same thing again, it's very likely you'll stumble into a slightly different narrative path and discover new things. And like Nim said, we didn't try to make it like there is a right choice that leads you to the correct ending and the wrong choice that just denies you the reward. Is that every choice has different flavors of results and they all give you something.
So in a way, death isn't failure, but it's sort of success because you get to learn something new.
Yeah,
in a way.
You actually need to die to find some clues, because how you die in the game is a clue in itself. So the players should ask themselves, why did I die here? Like, why did I get killed?
In this way.
And that is a clue. And when you see Ilar's reactions in different situations, you are trying to get a sense of their character and what drives them.
And what they might not be sharing with you.
Yeah, they have their secrets.
They have, like anyone else, they have their secrets. And you don't know anything, so it's not exactly very difficult to mislead you if someone were to do that.
Very suspicious and interesting, I would say. Now, from the moment that I entered the story, I've actually been captivated by the richness of the Taudun universe, and I was really curious to ask, how deep does the lore go here?
That's, I guess, maybe a slightly complicated thing to answer, because so I'll do my best. We have a certain amount of breadth. Certainly, we know the world's place in the universe. It's it's a planet orbiting a star in a galaxy. We know about the sort of geology of the world. What's the composition of the surface? Land versus sea. We know there are deserts and forests. We know the kind of political, cultural situation. Who is a ruling class? What is the kind of power structure they have? What is a religion? How the magic system works? What is their economy? So we know a lot of things like that. Depth is more difficult to answer because I think we don't really have the same degree of development in all of those areas. Like we haven't necessarily dove really deep into how their politics works, like how they make decisions, what is how much democracy, how much meritocracy, how much plutocracy they have. But we kind of focus mostly on things that really interest us and we have experience with, like their spirituality, their relationship between the minds of the people and the world, the planet, sort of like the global consciousness.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we designed a world, but in this game, we are not so focused on explaining how the world works. This is just a snippet, like a life story of two characters who are in this place, and there are things around them, but in this case, just a fragment of the world is shown.
Yeah.
But we have much more than what is shown here.
Yeah, I think our philosophy with the first game was neither of us enjoy exposition dumps very much in shows and games and movies. Like we kind of roll our eyes when the character shows up and starts explaining to you why things are the way they are. I think exposition is not, it's not necessarily bad on its own. It's that it's there to serve a purpose, right? It's there so that things that happen, people can understand the significance of the events if they know the circumstances around the events. And so I feel like the amount of world building you should show is directly proportional to how much you need to get that response, to build that atmosphere and to make the events impactful, emotional. So we try to, as much as possible, not tell people what the world is like, but hint at what the world is like through the way the people act, how they speak, what they eat, how they swear, how they pray, things like that. We know what the world is like in quite a lot of detail, but we don't necessarily tell anyone, and you just kind of smell it from things that happen.
Yeah, one thing you said, it's like in this world, seas are very important part of the culture. So a lot of exclamations or metaphors they use are related to water and sea.
And water.
Yeah, because it's just what their culture is about. So
the energy of magic is called waters with a capital W. That's a obvious example from the text.
Yes, I did notice that. I think I was a bit confused at first. I thought I'm not getting it, but now that you're explaining it like that, I think it makes way more sense to me now. I'm just slow, don't worry. I just kind of, sometimes I catch some things a bit 30 minutes later that I should have. That's just me.
To me, it was perfectly fine, don't worry. I understood.
Here we go again. Of course, you got it. I didn't. I don't know which time this is happening, but I start writing down how many times that is happening.
I'm sorry, I just read a lot of fantasy novels and
yeah.
So we were aware that this setting will be somewhat confusing for readers at the beginning, but that also puts you in the shoes of the main character because it is confusing for them as well. They don't know what these words mean. They're like, heart vessel, heart what?
Yeah.
Like, they don't know, and it's okay that they don't know because over time the player and the character will learn together. So at the beginning you are as confused as the main character is. Yeah. And then later, as you play, you start connecting things, and by making those connections, you are able to solve the mystery. So in a way, this confusion, these terms that are not so familiar,
not explained,
is actually bringing you closer to the main character.
The way I look at it is, if you can imagine two kinds of storytelling, I mean, there are obviously more, but let's say the first kind is, first you are told how things work so that you can follow what happens and understand what might be the consequences, because you already understand the way things work. Like, there are no foreign terms to you. If a term is introduced, it is explained, so you know logically what's happening. That is a good way to tell a story. It's very easy to make a page turner that way, where you know what's going to happen and how things work, and you really want to find out what happens. And there's another way, which is you don't know how everything works. You know just enough that you're able to follow and kind of understand some of the consequences. Like, you don't know these words perhaps, but you understand that you have no memory and something is some magical entity wants to destroy you or devour you, and that's bad, and you need to find a spell. So we give you enough that you understand the core of what's happening, but there's a lot around, like these terms and these environments and these figures. You don't really understand them, so they kind of sit around and they're like vapor, like smoke in the room, and they add an air of mystery to the whole thing, and you're they stay with you as you follow what you can follow. And then slowly, as you move along the story, more and more understanding comes to you about some of these things. So then suddenly you get these flashes of revelations, like, that's what this means. And I find that very interesting because the amount of satisfaction you feel when that kind of revelation occurs is proportional to how long the mystery stayed with you. So the longer we can keep a thing mysterious but still have it in the back of your mind, the more satisfying it is when you really realize what it meant the whole time.
It feels like it's a nice way to introduce the characters slowly into the story with a simple task in the beginning, like find the spell, save your life, and then during this thing you figure out that everything is wrong and you have to find what's actually standing behind this whole thing. But it's a matter of life and death at this point. You have to figure it out.
Yeah, and we made the player as a sort of a character in the game as well. I will try to kind of explain it a little bit. So even though the main character in the game, when you start from the beginning, because the game is played as in the story is looping, you play, you get to the false ending, then you begin again. But at some points the player can prove to the game that they understand something. There are some moments when you can type in certain things, and then once you type something correctly and with that you prove to the game that you understood something, the game will remember that. So the world changes as you figure out things. So in a way the player wins subconscious in a way. So they lost their memory, but the player is this tickle of memory that's coming to the surface. So there are some secrets that if you know them, you can theoretically solve the game on the first try, because it doesn't matter if you see everything on one run. You need to understand things, and then once you understand them, you can do things because you have player knowledge, and that player knowledge is a force in this game. Like you need to use player knowledge because that's been subconscious in a way, and bring things together.
I would
Right.
actually call it their superconscious. So it's things that some of it is subconscious, like things that they're remembering, but some of it is things that they learn later, right? They learned it and they know it somewhere in their mind, but they don't understand how they know it. So it's something that's above their normal consciousness. Some of these secrets that act like keys that open paths, right? They don't understand how they can remember that, but they have it. When the situation is right, the answer comes to them. And that's the sort of thing that when I mentioned earlier, we want to have the world have this kind of religion, spirituality, psychology that we resonate with. That's one example of some kind of psychological phenomenon that fascinates me, that I have experience with, and we try to sneak those things into the game, or rather, it just comes naturally out of us.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Everything you said about the world building, and I need to ask, what sparked the idea to combine horror, romance, and interactive deduction within this rich and dark fantasy world?
I always love
Those things.
those things, I guess.
Those are our favorite things to read, or to watch, to experience.
Yeah, like when two of us decided to write a story, it wasn't a choice to have like this dark story. It's just what comes to us naturally.
It's like that trope, like you make the thing that you wish existed, right? Like it would really be great if there was a story that has these things in it, but there isn't. I guess we have to make it sort of like
That's always good. That's always good to have people that can bring things like this to us, people who can't make them. So thank you.
And I really love murder mysteries and some kind of deductive puzzles. So at the beginning, this game was supposed to be way more difficult to solve than I was imagining. That I will create this story that's the facade of it. It's simple, but there is so many secrets in it that people will have to come together, talk, trying to get
a degree in cryptography.
Yeah, I mean,
all right, yeah, we remember.
Still, like you have some secrets you will never, even if you read everything, you will never get to the ending unless you really pay attention to the clues. Sometimes the clues are hidden in the drawings, sometimes they're in the letters, but you need to pay attention, right? You need to
Yeah.
bring things together in your head and decide, okay, I have this, how can I use it? What does this mean?
So a lot of these design choices also came from just us sometimes watching a show or playing a game and going like, this puzzle is so obvious. Like, do they not think that we have at least 5-year-olds intelligence or something? Like, you know, so a lot of games.
Okay, we need that. Please, no, don't make people get rid of that. Okay, I have a simple mind. I have a very simple mind. Sometimes it's a good thing to have things obvious for the ones that can't solve them.
Yeah, well, you know, like we were saying, we wanted to make something that we can enjoy, and that part of that was something that's a little bit tricky, more tricky than like putting the square box in the square hole and then the square shaped door opens. That kind of, yeah, or in Resident Evil's case, putting the chess piece into the chess piece shaped keyhole, and then the door opens. It's not satisfying if it's too direct, right?
Yeah, I agree. I like challenges in games, honestly. So we're just two different people. Sweet Pixel likes easygoing stuff. I like the challenges. So
Yeah,
I suppose if
understand.
some people have trouble solving it, there is always a guide.
There's a
Okay,
guide.
currently the guide is a little bit obsolete since we released the expanded edition and a lot of things changed. But
They just come to Discord and say like, I'm really stuck. Can you solve?
Yeah.
And then we're like,
and we
okay.
even have a hint system in the game.
Yeah, there's
that is very vague. It will not tell you exactly what you need to do, but it will make you ask questions
The
to
right
yourself.
questions.
So maybe
or
it
if
helps.
or if you're really just on the edge of figuring it out, then the hint could potentially nudge you over it.
But I really enjoyed because I imagine the player will read and they will start having theories and suspicions. And then we were thinking what kind of theories they could have from here. And then we tried to reinforce the wrong theories
Yeah.
as long as they make sense for the plot. So
yeah, that's a thing that I think happens regularly in Agatha Christie's things, like with, you know, this detective shows like Poirot, Murder on the Nile, that kind of thing, where the camera sees things and the audience sees these facts, and the showmaker knows if you see these facts, this is the obvious conclusion, and maybe there's also less obvious conclusion, but they strategically reinforce the wrong ones so that you don't jump to the right conclusion. By the same time, all these facts must also fit for the right conclusion. It's just that it's not the most obvious fit. So it creates this kind of brain click in you where you're following this narrative, seeing these facts, and you're like, oh, okay, this must have happened. That makes total sense. And then when you find out, you're like, oh my God, I was so close. I was just off by this much. A very funny feeling you get in your brain.
And then once you see the true ending, and if you play it again, then it's absolutely
so obvious that you're like, oh my God, they were just like taunting me with these like hints everywhere.
Yeah, in retrospective, it will be very clear.
I understand that. When I usually read books, I'm constantly trying to outsmart the book and figure out the thing before it happens, before it's shown to me. And when something like that happens, it just bites me on the ass, and you're like, you were wrong, you're dumb, you should have thought about that, you know. So I actually feel satisfaction when something like that happens to me, because it earns my respect to the authors usually.
Yeah, there's nothing quite as entertaining as being surprised.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really happy. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead, please.
I'm glad that we had the pleasure of hearing about the story and the inspiration, and naturally we are going to move on to the characters. We'll start with our protagonist. We play as Vin and have zero memories of how we got where we are. Fortunately, we meet Ilar, a character shrouded in mystery. Could you shed some light on Ilar's character, please?
Ilar is sort of a mystery wrapped around the enigma, dipped in secret sauce. It's not a spoiler that when you meet them, they don't seem to be 100% forthright with you. It could be explained that there is literally a life and death situation unfolding, and you probably should not be trying to repair your memories at the same time as trying to find, you know, the way out or find your safety. So that's one way they try to get you to go along and hurry up. But at the same time, you discover certain facts about your relationship, your past, since you do have you are partners in magic together, and you find things like letters and records, and they seem to not completely gel up with what you've been told or what you can observe. But they do seem very concerned for your safety. They want to, and for their own, and they're just trying their best to get you to do the right thing and stop being distracted and go off in tangents.
Well, basically, they're flabbergasted that you lose your memory at this crucial moment, and they're just like, I can't deal with this. Okay, we'll figure out who you are later. Now just do these things because we will die if you don't. So, like, please don't read the letters. Do what I say.
Read them later.
Yeah, read them later. So they're under a lot of stress because they're currently trying to keep under control this angry hole that wants to swallow the whole thing, right? The whole tower. And they don't have their Win's assistant, right? So they're not the strong one here. And suddenly their boss is clueless, maybe like drank themselves into oblivion, and now they have to deal with stuff. So they're probably frustrated, scared, and they don't have patience for
your shenanigans.
Yeah. But still, like, there is tenderness between them, but I think their character currently, at least at the beginning, is, yes, we were many things, but now is not the time. Please focus.
I am curious to find out a bit more about the unique relationship between Vin and Ilar. What was your approach to building intimacy between the two, and how was that preferred? How was the preferred love language, so to speak?
Well, they had a complicated relationship before. So they lived together and they were work colleagues, but they also had some physical intimacy, although it was mostly it wasn't an emotional thing, at least not from Win's perspective, because Win is very focused on their work, while Ilar is quietly pining for them. And
should we talk about the Magi partner system a little bit?
Sure, if you want. Yeah.
So part of the complication is in the world building, in their culture, where Magi usually work in pairs, and they need one another to keep them from straying during rituals that can be intensely intoxicating. Because when you do a ritual, when you come into contact with waters, the essence of life and magic, it empowers you and it intoxicates you. It makes you very, very blissful. So partners are usually formed between two magi. Vin is called a dyed magi, magus, right? They have these markings on their skin that is a sign of that they have power. And people who are dyed live a very long time, like
and
hundreds of years.
They're considered kind of like a higher caste
they're sort
in
of
the
like
society.
like a priest caste or the Brahmin caste in Indian system. And Ilar is sort of like a normal person in their lifespan. They're not marked with the dye, and they don't have a kind of prolonged lifespan like Vin. So their relationship is sort of frowned upon by Vin's family, who comes from a long lineage of respected magi. So there's that wrinkle. And while the partners often do become intimate, it's usually they keep it strictly professional, or they're kind of mutually engaged in intimacy. Well, Vin is such a workaholic, and they have such this obsession and drive with their ambition, their project, their life's work, which is a grand spell, that they're sort of on the rails about that. And Ilar is more in touch with their emotions and sort of more laid back in a way. I guess they want to enjoy just everyday living. So they're a bit at odds about what they each want.
Ilar is more of a person who stops and smells the flower, while Vin would be like, sniff, okay, I smell the flower,
Give
now
me the
what?
next one.
Like, now what?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a complicated relationship between these two. I am a hopeless romantic, and that's why I'm drawn to romantic stories. And in the story, I felt like Ilar is like a serious love interest. But are there any other love interests in the game?
Well, that's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Well,
you can say that you love your cat. I mean, that fancies there.
I mean, like in a
platonic way.
No weird stuff with cats.
Illegal stuff.
Yeah.
So you can actually it's possible for Vin to go off with the cat and do adventuring things.
I mean, you can. This cat is actually a royal cat, and you can become cat servant, and
yeah.
like if you decide to abandon Ilar and go your own way, you can help Fazpens reclaim their kingdom.
Yeah, their lost kingdom.
That is
That's
one
one
of
option.
things. But yeah,
So you can romanticize the cat.
Romanticize,
game.
yes, but not romance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cat doesn't.
Okay.
The
I mean,
cat
cat
is,
still doesn't care if you
if
live
you
or
live
die.
it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
what you feel about.
But yeah, Ilar is the main love interest, because we thought better to have one person and make like a very complex, nuanced relationship with this one person than to spread it amongst many characters, but then like have it more shallow. So it's
Yeah, I
just
think
Ilar.
at the time it was our first game. It was the first time we were writing something of this scale, right? So we thought we want to make it as simple as possible, but try to find the depth and the quality in the simple setup. Like one of our inspirations was actually 12 Angry Men. Is a movie that takes place entirely in a room, and all people do is they talk. There's 12 people, they're members of a jury, and they're talking through the whole movie, trying to decide the fate.
Also Men from the Earth.
And Men from the Earth also, that's even less people. It's 5 people in a room, and all they do is talk. And those two are like two of our favorite films, and they're the simplest premise imaginable, but they just wrote it really well. They set up things, they lead you on a course, they upset your expectations in delightful ways. And in our case, we just added way more romance and like sexiness and a bit of danger, but it still started from extremely simple setups. You, your partner, in a tower.
And it makes sense because two of them live together, isolated from everything else. So it makes sense that two of them are it for each other, right?
Yeah.
So having another person would feel kind of strange.
What about the adorable eel friend I noticed mentioned, I think on Steam, if it's not my mistake, because I read that and I was like, what is the adorable eel friend and what is the angry potato and why is the potato angry?
I don't think we ever even got into this in the game at all, how Vin got the eel, but we know how they got it.
Well, I mean, I guess this is not such a spoiler, right?
Yes.
So Vin has a eel tattoo on their arm. So in one part of the game, the tattoo becomes alive, because I mean it's alive the whole time, but at some point you can talk to it, and it is very adorable. And the eel
is sort of. I think so. I need to verify this with the eel, but I believe the eel is sort of like a duke in a certain realm of the seas. Like they're like in command of many eels, and Vin made a pact with them at some point to become their protector. A lot of magi do that. They try to make a pact with a protector from the seas who takes on the shape of animal and helps them.
Yeah. So Fazpens was Ilar's familiar, and this eel is Vin's familiar. But since Vin was a magi who was walking other realms, not just this physical plane, so their familiar is not on this physical realm, it's in other realms. So you meet the familiar when you go
to other
on the other side.
Actually, I just want to make sure you understand that according to Fazpens, Ilar is the familiar.
Yeah. I mean, both Vin and Ilar are servants, right?
Yeah.
Angry Potato is... So, we already mentioned that there is this gaping door to abyss trying to swallow them. So, at some point, Ilar, seeing that Vin is nervous about... Terrified of the Abyss Dwara, that's the name of the door.
Door to the abyss, yeah.
They propose that they give it a nickname to make it less scary. So you have an option to rename the Abyss Dwara into Mashed Potato. So it's kind of like one of the... It's not like
that's really funny, actually.
A secret because it's relatively easy to go on that route.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you agree to that, then for the rest of the game, everybody will refer to the Abyss Dwara as mashed potato. Yeah. And of course, it's very angry. It wants to eat them. So it's Angry Potato.
So it's basically the one who shall not be named
thing.
Yeah. But it's Angry Potato instead of that. I find this very, very funny and very cute, and especially with the talking tattoo. I believe that if I had a talking tattoo, I would never be lonely. So
yeah.
it would be very nice. That's such a nice idea.
And play fetch with the your tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like because our game is pretty dark
It's pretty
at
grim
times,
sometimes. Yeah.
so we put a lot of lighthearted and funny moments to kind of balance the dreariness. Because if you read something and it constantly gets dark and heavy,
It's just boring.
you lose the will to read. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a bit of heaviness, then something cute or lighthearted happens
You
to
need-
kind of give a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need the fresh air just
And
for a
me,
second.
that's how I think a lot of people, maybe not even most people, they try to cope with things that are that depressing and severe with a bit of humor, right? There's gallows humor, black humor. It's sort of like a very effective way to deal with things like that. So I think, yeah, that putting some humor in there is sort of fits human nature. Like they're not going to be just straight up depressed and terrified the whole time just because it's bad. You have to try to see the humor in it so they can make it through the night.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to ask a question about the characters. So, were any of the characters in this universe inspired by real people, you know?
Well, I'm sure some of ourselves went in there. I think that can't really be helped.
Yeah,
Even if you don't try to do it.
As we said, this was our first story that we wrote. I mean, I personally, maybe I wrote like some small snippets before, but I was never really writing anything. I suppose I asked myself like, okay, if I was in the shoes of this character, what would I do? So some elements of the characters are like inspired from us. Like, for example, I'm a terrible workaholic, so in a way, because I know intimately how that feels, yeah, so it was easy to give that to one of the characters. Yeah, so
I mean, I work from the theory that most humans are 99.9% the same in terms of their mental capacity, mental capability, and we act differently. We appear to have different personalities and preferences only because of the conditions are different. So we happen to have different bodies and different upbringings, different health conditions and things like that. So I feel like working from that model at least allows me to create characters just by appreciating what I might do if all these conditions in my life were the same as in the story. And even the same person can become completely different if enough things change around him, right? That's sort of what I work from. And of course, sometimes it's just easy when you think of a character to just start from somebody you know. Like sometimes you have these characters in your life where you think of the person who's the most funny friend you have, who's the most quirky, who's the most grumpy, and you can use those archetypes to start off and then you tweak them, right? I don't usually just take someone from real life and put them in a story, mostly because they never fit that well. It's never that perfect, and some tweaking is always needed for better results.
Yeah, but Fastpence is definitely inspired by Betty.
It's Betty.
Arquette.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, Betty also has fuzzy pants, so
yeah.
So
Fast Pants is just what we think Betty would be like if she could talk. That's basically right.
Yeah.
Now, while playing the game, I didn't fail to notice the beautifully drawn art, and it made me feel like I've opened an ancient fantasy novel with stunning illustrations on every page. I can't help but wonder how you created the art. Could you please share with us your process and inspiration?
At the beginning, I was actually drawing everything with ink on paper. So, for example, the desk scene, that's traditionally drawn. And with time, how I tweaked some images, my hand was suffering from so much drawing. Like most of the backgrounds, I think are traditional. Yeah. So.
And I think the inspiration comes from two of the main ones. One is French, Sergio Topi.
I mean,
actually,
I was
Spanish.
Like this. When I was studying techniques like block printing, like etching. So it was something that is very familiar to me and that I enjoy a lot. So my experience with doing that kind of traditional art, I just translated it into this format. So you definitely kind of get this flavor of traditional etching.
Yeah.
Not slightly less, because when I I did some art for edition. I did them all digitally. But I think see on some pieces
The
that
roots, yeah.
they're traditional.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
Really impressive. Good job on that. The art and the story didn't fail to immerse me in the world of Taudun, but neither did the music and sound effects. Could you tell us more about the process and the music itself?
Well, I have been tinkering here and there with music all my life, you know, playing some instruments off and on just as a hobby. Sometimes messing with DAWs, the digital audio workstation. So they are softwares that allows you to compose and orchestrate and things. So I think we just because I know how to set up a system where you can press keys on the keyboard and get different kinds of sounds. So we just set up some instruments. You know, you can load in samples recorded from like sitars and drums and whatever. So we set up some instruments and we have this mood of the story and the place and the characters in our heads. So we just go on there and improvise.
Yeah, so Zee played most of the piano pieces. Zee plays piano as well. I think there is one piece that we took a sample, but I think most of the other piano things you played. So Zee composed those piano parts, and I made also several soundtracks.
Yeah.
And I make them. I can imagine the shape of the music in my head. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I know how it should feel, so I just put sounds together until they match the shape that I imagined. Because I see the scene, I know what kind of music I want in that. So I just try to put things together until they sound how I like. And I do rough composing of the elements, and then Zee
tweak knobs and stuff.
It does more like technical stuff to kind of balance stuff. I just put the raw elements together.
Yeah, I don't see the shapes like you do, but I still like I see the scene in my head, or I get the flavor of the scene, and then I just like randomly press keys, and then it either sounds right or wrong, and it can be less wrong or more wrong, right? So I just press different keys and change what I press until it's the least wrong possible, and then I record that, and then later, you know, we tweak the volumes and the balance and things like that, technical stuff.
Yeah, usually I give you feedback like
make it sparkle.
Can you make it more round? This sound, it's too kind of pointy. Like
then I have to translate that into like, so that's what 3 decibels off of the 20 kilohertz band or whatever.
And then I can
they're like, I don't know, just make it more round. so they try different things until they say, that's it, that's the roundness. I'm like, oh my god, okay, you should have told me it's the reverb.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any training in music. I just know how it should sound, and I'm just trying, like, do it myself or bully Zee into getting to sound how I want.
I used to read blogs from music sound engineers, and this is what they say, like when they work with like CEOs or like money people who don't do music, they'll come into the studio and they'll be sitting at a console, and somebody behind them will say like, give him more pizzazz over here, and they'll have to figure out what the heck pizzazz is in this soundtrack.
Honestly, you did a great job with that. The game feels very atmospheric.
Thanks.
And I love the sound design. So yeah, just my compliments on that. It seems to me that you guys are jack of all trades and you're a great team and you're working very good together.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, and that's also because of we don't have any budget, so we have to do.
It's not like, let's not romanticize that. We're doing this because we don't have money to hire someone else to do it better.
Yeah.
But hey, it's fun. We end up enjoying it. So
let's say Vin and Ilar are stranded on a desert island together. What's the first thing they'd argue about, and who would end up in charge of survival?
Well, I think Vin will be in charge, but Ilar will have to do everything because Vin cannot even manage to like cook soup without burning it.
No, I think it would be like this. So Ilar would, make the shelter, cook the food and
Chop
stuff,
the wood, all that.
and Vin would make elaborate plan how to get out of it. Like they would like make the craft, try to figure out their position. So that would be the kind of the grand plan, and Ilar will make sure they, I don't know what lives on a deserted island that, I don't know, monkey doesn't eat them or something.
Yeah, mosquitoes.
Are they gonna argue about the plan for survival?
No.
Or it's gonna be absolutely Vin's work?
No, I think Ilar doesn't. So Vin is a kind of person where if you argue with them, they will just win the argument. But what Ilar would do is they'll say, "Sure, that's what you say," and then much later, when they're like having drinking coconut together, they'll say like, what if we do this some other way? Well, if they suggest it when Vin is in a good mood, I decided we should do this other way, and that'd be a great idea. And it's more like
we do that.
Yeah,
yeah.
So something like that is what I picture.
Yeah, but I can kind of imagine them arguing because Vin wants to work, and Ilar is like, "You can't work now. You need to go in the shade. You will overheat."
If it comes to that, Ilar will carry Vin bodily to the shade without arguing. Just like, okay, you leave me no choice, and then just pick him up, put him over the shoulder, and go to the shade.
Just like this little note in the demo when they were saying, "Come to eat, meet me there. You need to eat. It's time to stop.
Don't make me haul you there."
Yeah. I'm
gonna
drag you if I need to.
Yeah, that's something that like I am capable of waking in the morning and sit at my computer and work, and then I just look outside and it's night, and I'm like, what happened? So if Zee doesn't put food in front of me, I will forget to eat. Like, for example, if Zee goes away and I'm left to my own devices, I would have maybe like one meal per day, and I would have something like, I don't know, some leftover lunch for breakfast, and that would be because I will just forget.
If there was ramen, it would be ramen.
Yeah.
It's the ADHD hyperfixation of job getting done. Like, I get you. I am the same. So, as a couple working so closely together, how do you manage task switching and collaboration while creating a project as ambitious as Chronicles of Taudun?
Usually we decide who does what, and then when one of us gets stuck, then we ask for help. Because Zee also draws, even though I'm, quote unquote, the artist for the game. Sometimes I like, Zee, I can't figure out this arm, help me, and then Zee would take over and draw me a sketch for the arm or something, and then it'll be okay. Or I don't know, like in writing, sometimes like I'm good with romance scenes, those are my favorite thing to write, and maybe like some creepy things.
I'm good with murder and
no, I also write murder. You're good with with just like boring, I mean not boring, but like with the dialogue, the things in between.
The boring stuff. I mean, like, okay, so for you, those are the boring stuff.
Yeah, like,
but for me, like, I can just, it just comes to me, and I can easily
and like some philosophical stuff.
I like the trippy stuff.
Zee likes trippy stuff.
I have a lot of.
And I know you didn't see this from the demo, but after each death, you have a conversation with an entity, and they kind of help you process
otherworldly.
This otherworldly person helps you process things that you are experiencing in the game. So, for example, that character is completely written by Zee because we just decided it's Zee's territory.
Yes, I think I also really enjoyed Quirk. I think a lot of the hermit was me. Like, I just start picturing like overweight British man wearing a top hat trying to sell you something, and if I get the image of the,
I'm more visualizing like a Balkan person who is trying to haggle on you on a free market or something.
Sure, yeah. It was not British, like a Cockney.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And for the funny scenes, like the comedy bits, I think those are our favorite too, right? We just get cozy on the couch together, and we are just writing it together. We are just talking, and
will be funny, like what will make us laugh, spill our drink.
So we're just literally writing it together at the same time.
I think one time we had we attempted to use two keyboards, but that didn't work. So Yeah, I think it just worked out that way. That you like some styles of things, some types of things, and like some type of things, and we just each try to write as much as what we enjoy as possible, and then work together on the rest.
And it really helps that Z listens to me in all things, because I tend to be bossy sometimes. So Z rarely argues and usually sees the wisdom of my ways.
Oh, yes.
So it's
Hard.
like Ilar and Vin yourselves, the same thing basically.
Well, we did mention there's a little bit of that happening. As to how much, that's you need a psychiatrist to know.
I mean, I don't know, like I don't, like, it's difficult to judge from one's perspective, but
Yeah.
like when my sister played our game, she said like, oh my god, it's totally, these characters have your humor, and I can totally see two of you writing this because it's so you. And I was like, oh, okay, I
Yeah.
guess. Thanks.
Are there any behind the scenes details or fun facts you could share about the development process? Maybe a sneak peek into your ideas for future projects, or sometimes people give us some concept art, for example.
So behind the scenes sneak peek, there's one idea that has stayed with me for some years, and I always find myself wanting to put it into a story, and I was never sure how. It's the idea that the world is alive. You know, there's many interpretations of that. Like some people go with that it's a global consciousness. All the minds of like bugs and birds and humans are somehow communicating. Some people think there's a kind of, they call the earth like a goddess. I thought it would be funny if it was literally true. The world is literally an entity, a living life form. So then of course you have a premise like that, then you can ask yourself, how does it live? What does it live on? What feeds it? Does it poop? What does it talk? Can you communicate with it? If you could, what would that be like? That's a concept that we want to play with in the next or one of our future games in the Taudun kind of universe. I mean, it's already like it's part of the world building, so it's already under the surface.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
been hit-
Through is the planet.
Through is
Yeah.
Through is in the game. We don't really explicitly tell you what it is, but that's because the people don't really understand it, and you don't have more knowledge than the characters do.
Yeah, but let's maybe go more concrete. Like, we plan one bigger game. It's The Hunger. And while we were brainstorming for The Hunger, we started writing character backstory
For the ones that will appear
for
in the Hunger.
Yeah, for the characters that will appear.
And then we got lost in that because we really like the characters and the
Yeah.
stories. So now we want to
So-
make that its own visual novel.
Yeah, so we are kind of compiling our writing about the characters into kind of like I don't know if it will be interactive, but it will be sort of maybe a book
It could
or
be
something.
kinetic or it could be a book. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something that we are working on.
There's also that Vin and Ilar have a lot of history that you don't get to see in this game, and also there are other magi that we kind of built up around the story, which you maybe get a glimpse of. So one of the things we're also working on is short stories that are tangential to the remainder, that are related to Vin and Ilar, and so we want to also make a collection of those and release them also. So it gives you ideas of what the world is like outside of that tower.
But I think it might be interesting. For example, players might see that Win is mentioning Lura in the game as somebody who was influential.
Or they're basically like a
There are some
savior or a
yeah,
prophet
there's that
of
yeah,
some
yeah.
sort. Yeah.
So in the next game, Lura will be the main character. Will be the player character.
Yeah.
And we will go back in past and see what happened to make Lura into this kind of figure that is remembered thousands of years after.
Yeah, revered.
Yeah, so that is maybe like an interesting connection. And another character who is in Remainder will also appear,
in the,
but that is sort of a secret. So
yeah, they who shall not be named.
The angry potato. So actually, my next question was about the what's next in the game and what can fans look forward to in the future. And you kind of answered that in this.
Well, I guess what's next for this game. I mean, we have also thought about what Vin and Ilar would do. after this, this whole
Yeah.
ordeal.
I mean, we have so many ideas, but writing things takes so
Yeah, we only
much
have
time.
we only
Yeah.
have 2 hands, which is not enough
Yeah.
to write out all the things we want to.
Yeah, and I'm also currently writing a completely unrelated story just to take a break from Taudun because
You can be too immersed sometimes.
yeah, sometimes these worlds that are very complex and you need to always make everything click together and make sense is a little bit exhausting. So
Yes,
now I'm
yeah.
just writing something unrelated without any
Yeah.
strings attached.
No strings, yeah.
So that is what we are currently working on. I mean, I am working. Zee is working on short stories for remainder.
Now, before we wrap up, do you have any final messages for fans of the game?
Well, I think for those who didn't play it yet and are potentially curious to start, is that there is no bad endings, or if there maybe not bad endings, there are bad endings, but there are no wrong choices. So, and there is, I can't say good ending in the end, but it is like a very satisfying ending and it's somewhat bittersweet. But what I'm trying to say is don't get discouraged and don't lose hope. It does all get
It gets
revealed.
better.
Yeah, it gets better.
Yeah, I guess I would recommend that if you don't jump to the guide too easily.
Yeah, that because it's once you know the truth,
you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
You'll never be surprised by it.
Yeah.
Like if you found it on your own. So if you get stuck, maybe just like save the game, walk away, do something else you enjoy, come back to it later and with a fresh perspective and see what you figure out. Sometimes it just click
And
when
it's
you're
very
away.
good to write down notes on paper. Like a lot of people were sending us pictures of their notes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I a lot of times when I'm playing some detective game, I'm having my notebook where I'm writing down clues and theories because I like this, detectiving.
Detectiving.
So I'm very glad when I hear that other players are doing that for our game because that's what I kind of like hoped that people will do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it for today's episode, where we've unraveled just a little bit of the mystery, magic, and bittersweet beauty behind Chronicles of Taudun. Zee and Nim, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey and the heart you've poured into this game. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Whether you're a fan of intricate mysteries, gorgeous art, or simply love stories with soul, we hope you dive into Chronicles of Taudun and experience its haunting world for yourself.
And don't forget that indie game devs thrive on support and word of mouth. So if you've been enchanted by what you've heard today, tell a friend, write a review, or drop a kind message to the devs. Little acts of love go a long way.
Stay curious, stay kind, and if you're wandering through the collapsing towers of Taudun, don't forget to read between the lines. We'll see you next time.